are live, everybody. All right. Good evening, good morning, afternoon, whatever that is for you. We are coming to you live from within Somnium Space web parcel number 883. This parcel have seen a lot of events already, including some fashion shows of VR avatars. And today we'll have a great event. So several information points for you before we start. Of course, thank you for coming, everyone. Please mute your microphones, except the speakers. You can turn on your webcams and your head will become the webcam and we'll see you. You can wave at us like I do right now to you, like this. And if you want to ask the question and you want to do it right away, you can type it into the chat, which is on the bottom left, and then you can type it there. We'll see it and we'll ask the question. Or later, after we finish our panel discussion, you'll be able to answer the question with audio, as usual. So with that, I give the word to Kiran to start the. Oh, and he disappeared. All right. So let's see. Let's wait for him. Oh, you teleported yourself. Come back.
I don't know how I managed that.
Don't run away.
Here we go. I'm doing the moonwalk.
Exactly. Stylish. Oh, now you need to. Yeah, exactly. Now
Oh,
you need
wait, let me get up.
Yeah. Get on the ramp.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, he's coming back, and the floor is yours, Kiran. Let's kick.
Can you
things
guys hear
off.
me?
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Kiran, are you with us?
Can you hear me now? There we go.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I lost you there. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So the floor is yours. Let's start the event and let's dive into it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. I thought maybe we'd kick off with a quick introduction from everyone. I thought I'll just go first as I'm the least important and just moderating. So I'm Kieran Parker-Maroney. I'm based in the UK at the moment. I'm a hobbyist in the space. I invest in the space and in art, and have a background as an entrepreneur, and in TradFi led me down the crypto rabbit hole, which then had me end up exploring some of the metaverses. Wrote a piece on NFT art recently and hosted some Clubhouse meetups around that space. And I'm just passionate about the whole area and the frontiers that we're opening up. So there's a very brief background for me as the moderator. And now we'll get on to our esteemed guests. I'm not sure who wants to kick off. Maybe Artur, you can, just with your background.
Yeah, thanks. Very happy to be here. I'm Artur. I'm founder of Somnium Space, and yeah, very happy to be here. I'm involved, of course, in building our VR world, and of course, I'm also, collecting some NFT arts. I love collecting and wearing NFT avatars. That's addicting as hell. And once you start doing that, there's no way back. Yeah, I'm excited about the future and intersection of NFTs and VR for various practical reasons, which we'll probably discuss today. And happy to be here.
Thank you. Emma, do you want to go?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, I founded Digitalex last year, and we're focused on digital fashion and how that intersects with NFTs, gaming, esports, and then I guess more broadly, the metaverse. So I guess a lot of my interest lies within the digital fashion space. That's kind of mostly my passion. And as Arthur said, it's kind of links between wearables and NFTs and all of that side of things. So to give a little bit more background, we started the first digital fashion live marketplace on Ethereum, focused on allowing digital fashion designers to distribute their designs as NFTs. And then we bridge this directly into gaming and esports with our platform, Esper. So that's how we started, and we're doing now a lot as well on the hybrid digital physical side of things, and launching that soon. But yeah, that's kind of my involvement in the space.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Silly Tuna, do you want to go?
Oh, we don't hear you. We don't hear you. We see you, but we don't hear you.
Briefly appear
All right.
with the microphone on as well this time. We just had food delivered, so that's why I'm like not showing myself very much. You don't need to see me eating. I have a game industry background. Ran a game studio for many years, making sort of console games, handheld games, indie games, and then got involved in crypto in 2012, 2013. And since that time, I've done all sorts of things. But my main interest has always been NFTs, and since before they were called NFTs, and looking at how they could change sort of games, virtual worlds, music, the whole lot. So right now is a very interesting time. So mainly now I sort of invest in projects, do a little bit of trading. I have 4 different projects that I also contribute to as well, or set up. And so I'm kind of interested in how virtual worlds will change right now through NFT use.
Thank you. And 6?
Hey, first I want to say this is the whole like TV on my head is really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
love it.
Yes. So I started 3 VR companies. One was basically trying to create persistent identity in virtual reality. One was a virtual Fitbit across everything. Any headset or any game, and the one I'm working on right now is kind of esports meets sports. I have a strong emphasis in avatar and virtual identity because my legal name is actually from my World of Warcraft avatar. I take the whole virtual identity thing very seriously, and virtual reality is kind of where my own mindset matches professionally. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I love it, and I think we'll dig into that in a bit as well. Your background with the World of Warcraft and virtual worlds. Shreyansh, are you there?
I just messaged him actually. He may not. He messaged me about 3 hours ago saying that he was going to sleep because it's 2 a.m. for him in India, and then he's going to set an alarm. So maybe the alarm didn't go off.
Hey, we've all been there. I can sympathise with that. So yeah, if he shows up, great. But we'll kick off in that case. I know we're here today to discuss the pillars of the metaverse, and I thought just for the audience and for everyone involved, it might be interesting just to get everyone's idea of what they actually classify as the metaverse, as I think it can be a somewhat nebulous term for people. So I thought maybe the best person to kick off would be Artur, and then be interested to hear 6, Tuna, Emma, your thoughts. But just kick off with what you guys classify as the metaverse.
Right. I think from the very beginning when I started Somnium, I always had this idea in mind where the metaverse to me is a highly immersive set of different environments where people can do basically whatever they want. It's a parallel reality for people's and humanity existence. And when I say set of different immersive environments, I mean different companies even. So Somnium Space I see as the big part of Metaverse, and I hope it will have a huge impact on how the Metaverse shapes. But it will be not the only one. I just don't believe in the singularity of the Metaverse where only one company has it all. I don't think it's even possible that it will be like that. I know from the historical point of view that it usually is, involved around few companies, few of the biggest ones. But I think we're at a point of time when things change, and I think blockchain as a technology in general will help that change and then transition. So again, I see Somnium Space as an important part of the metaverse, and the metaverse itself, it's a highly immersive environment where everybody can express themselves, can monetize their skills, can exist, can have fun, and can just be whoever they want to be.
Yeah, brilliant. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in. Silly Tuna, I know we've had a clubhouse where we got onto this a little bit, and I think you had some really interesting views. So
He's quickly chewing.
so
Yeah, I am genuinely trying to get a burger down my throat.
I say, do you want to eat? And
No,
Six can kick
I'm good.
off.
I'm just going to keep eating whilst everyone else is talking. No, I think for me there are so many definitions of the metaverse, and it really comes down to some extent, it comes down to what people's personal feelings are, because we don't have a proper true metaverse yet. And so I say that because things are very siloed and not interconnected. So the metaverse right now is an image-based metaverse through the web, actually. That is a metaverse of sorts. But in terms of, if you're thinking of a metaverse in terms of mixing with 3D environments like this, games and so on, digital clothing, which obviously interests a lot of us, for me, there's got to be connectivity between all these different platforms and commonalities through identity and possessions. Then you have a true metaverse, because our possessions and our identity moves around with us, our reputation. And we have little strands of it in sort of the internet, and we have through web browsers and games, but things are really disconnected right now. And Web3 technologies, decentralized technologies, is probably the only way you could achieve what we would see as like the Ready Player One thing, but as a metaverse, not as owned by one company.
No, fascinating. Thanks. Six, do you want to?
Yeah, I like to think of it as, so software companies are usually, software versus hardware companies and startups are usually referred to as bits versus atoms, moving atoms versus moving bits. And I think who we are as physical people is who we are as atoms, and then who we are in the digital world is who we are as bits. I think the metaverse can be applied to almost anything. That's why the term is becoming, kind of difficult to define. Anything from your Twitter account to your profile picture to your username. But the way I like to think of it is, how do we influence human connection through bits instead of atoms? And that's how I distinguish the difference between real life and the metaverse.
I love that, and it's interesting hearing the take of Twitter and these kind of online profiles being thought of in the metaverse, which I think a lot of people wouldn't immediately go to, but when you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. So,
right.
Emma, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add before we kick off.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I agree a lot with what everyone else has said. I do believe that it's kind of this all-encompassing, immersive meta network. Can even kind of be thought of as like, quote unquote, what we thought that the internet promised us but never delivered. And this is why I think Web3 is so fundamental and intrinsic to defining the metaverse, because it's all about value transfer as well. And on the internet today, you can transfer information, but you can't really truly transfer value. And then that's where blockchain, NFTs, and all of kind of the features around Web3, they really allow for that. So there's kind of that interesting point there. And then I guess more from an identity perspective, I mean, I definitely believe that fashion and clothing and wearables plays a huge component in that. But I guess it's hard, like when we're thinking about, okay, how, our Twitter profiles, or this idea of even like a seamless identity across different graphic environments and what that looks like. Then it also poses the question, like, how do we really define identity in the metaverse? Like, I kind of disagree, and I don't think that it's going to be so much on like the human likeness or human uniqueness, but really more about kind of, I guess, self-expression, and how when we go in these different environments, how do we want to be seen? How do we self-express? And so that kind of feeds into a whole multitude of other components around, okay, from a security point of view, how are we looking at things like civil resistance or bot impersonation, AI kind of, and how they're going to affect the way that we are able to define ourselves and provide uniqueness around that. So yeah, there's a whole lot of components there, but definitely the immersive side is really important.
No, thank you. Well, I think, Silly Tuna, you touched on it, and Six did briefly there with interoperability, and that's an area I thought would be maybe interesting to kick off with, especially with our guests. And I thought it would be interesting to speak on how important you guys view it. We have Sandbox, Decentraland, Somnium Space, Crypto Voxels as examples of the VR world, and obviously out in Twitter and other games being built. So I wondered how you envision these places interacting, if at all. I think you mentioned, Silly, that you think some of it can be a bit siloed at the moment. So yeah, I'm just curious to hear how important you view interoperability, and if so, how you envision that evolving.
So the reason that silos are a problem, because it's not necessarily obvious to users until something goes wrong. When something goes wrong in a silo, you essentially sort of lose everything. So, and it happens in lots of different ways. People talk about spending loads of money in World of Warcraft. Obviously, we've got a Warcraft player here, or whatever game they happen to be in, and they want to be able to take that value out. And I'm not, I understand that, but for me, it's not so much about that. It's more about being able to move your identity, your reputation, other aspects of you that operate between these different worlds, and social media. Social media is absolutely part of the metaverse. So, that's why I reflect on things like avatars. The digital clothing isn't necessarily the digital clothing people expect it to be. So you might have some very fancy sneakers or some very fancy shoes or a coat or something, but that might be reflected in different ways across Somnium Space versus Sandbox 3D. So in Sandbox 3D, it might actually have some utility. In Somnium Space, it might just be a really cool coat, but it might always be like a very soulful or very defensive or very attacking type of coat, depending where it's used. So there are aspects of that you can take between different metaverses. The problem at the moment with silos is there's not a lot of incentive to let people do that, because a siloed environment tends to want to keep all its users inside it. They don't want cross-compatibility. It goes against the business model. And when businesses are growing as startups, you're doing everything you can to attract new people as well as retain them. When businesses hit a certain size, it's all about retention and preventing them leaving. So suddenly the incentives change. The incentives of the business often go contrary to the incentives of their users. And in a decentralized world, or with increased decentralized technology, use of decentralized technology, the incentives change to be more aligned, or can change to be more aligned. So particularly for environments which are brought up in that ecosystem. So that's why for me, this sort of cross-contamination, cross-usage is really, really important, because it's part of the alignment of incentives across these networks and across these applications.
Yeah, it's a great point. Arthur 6, I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to add on that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about the business side of things, and many companies are actually doing or behaving in a certain way because they want to have and keep their users. I can only tell that on the first site, how we've seen it already back in 2018, and how I've seen it myself. And that's why back then we've even formed a blockchain game alliance with Janus and High Fidelity and Admix. I think what you are saying is right, and it might work for some time, but ultimately, and that's what I believe, and that's what Somnium Space believes in, is ultimately the interoperability. And those companies who will allow interoperability of their assets with other worlds or other use cases, whatever you name it, they will win. And those who will not allow that, they will ultimately become losers, and they will have to adapt or they will die, because users will gravitate towards those experiences where they can interchange their avatars within different worlds, where they can bring their identity with them, where they can bring their money with them, where they can bring their inventory or anything they create to from one world to another, and in the end of the day, this will create more value for those worlds themselves and for the users of those worlds. And of course, again, blockchain is a very important part of this equation. Right now, it is the best technology to actually facilitate something like that. There's nothing better in the world at the moment. Maybe one day will be something better, and worlds like ours can start utilizing that. But at this moment, blockchain is the best technology to actually make that happen. And that's why we're we're working towards that. If you're in Somnium in VR, you can spawn the VR tablet, go to CryptoVoxels, grab your Xbox 360 controller, and just walk around CryptoVoxels while being inside Somnium Space. I think that's an amazing thing. And the same with Decentraland, for example. It's an amazing example of interoperability. You can actually be in one place and also be in the other metaverse at the same time. So yes, the interoperability is coming. It's no question about this. And those companies who will embrace it earlier will benefit from it more. And those companies who will not embrace it, they will not benefit from it. And they will be at risk of dying if they will not do it at some point of time. This is my opinion.
I think that's great to hear. We're going to touch on that, how you view them as competing or as allies. It sounds quite clearly like it's allies in that it helps to grow the space as a whole. Six, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that, or Emma equally, just on the interoperability front.
Yeah, I think I like to use real world examples a lot of the times when we're talking about digital things. And imagine buying a shirt that you could only use in your house. And I think, that's kind of where we're at, right? I can only wear this shirt, but the second I go outside, it disappears, right? And I think that's kind of the gated nature of a lot of these vertically integrated platforms. And the incentives behind the vertically integrated platforms are often make it so if you design anything, say the term UGC, user generated content. If you were to look at a lot of the terms of these platforms, you claim no ownership to any creations that you make. This is like Facebook Horizons. This is becoming kind of the new thing, right? So I think that there's two extremes here. There's this completely decentralized approach, and then there's the approach that a lot of these vertically integrated companies are doing, which is trying to make it so anything that you create is technically legally owned by the company itself, and you have claimed no ownership whatsoever to that. So I think that's really important for us to think about. Going down to the various different issues that I see with cross-platform avatars, working with avatars myself, sometimes certain games don't want to fit a certain aesthetic. Like they don't want an example that I use that makes Emma laugh is there was a unicorn playing Beat Saber or something. And, that's not necessarily by intention. You had to kind of, hack the game to be able to do that. And game developers don't necessarily like it when you work out of the aesthetic. So, there's kind of the two worlds are be balanced right now, which is creative control of the end user and then creative control of the actual game developers themselves. So I think that's the interesting conversation. If World of Warcraft was completely decentralized tomorrow and people started to come in with, VR chat avatars, people would just stop playing, right? So there's a balance when you're trying to kind of role play a certain narrative, right?
These aren't games.
Right, well.
No, it's a very interesting point, Six. Emma, I didn't know if you had something to share on that, obviously with the fashion and interoperability being a key point. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of reverb.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who is reverbing. It's Emma. All right. All right. I'll go.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Emma.
Sure. Interoperability, I think it's absolutely huge. I think when we talk about the metaverse, it does go hand in hand. But I think that the challenge is it's like we are in a transition between, like kind of Arda and Six was saying, we're in a transition between Web 2, where like the main business models that succeeded in Web 2 was all about walled gardens and how do you lock value in a silo and then you kind of grow out the market in a sense and gain the most market share. And Web 3, because there is that foundation of decentralization and open source is really part of it, those models don't really work. And when we're in that transition, I think the most important part, it's all about incentives and how do you actually incentivize people, particularly from the developer point of view, because they kind of are the gatekeepers at the moment to a lot of the content and the content that will go in. How do you actually incentivize them to want to open source more of their content or allow kind of that fluidity between people going into their environment and then also being able to go into other environments rather than just staying in that silo. So, that's a big thing that we're focused on. And I think that that's the really amazing part of Web3 and blockchain and crypto in general. It's all about you can actually create customized and programmable incentive networks around ecosystems that you just can't do in Web2. And so I think that really needs to be the focus going forward. It's about, okay, how do you create a metagame in the metaverse that when all of these different siloed content environments, they do come in, how can you have that incentive network so when a player comes and it actually makes sense for them to have, say, content in Somnium space and then take that into the sandbox or take that into GTA, Fortnite, or even an indie game. So how you can actually create that and how you can use cryptocurrency to actually create that value there. So I think that's kind of the key part when we transition it. It's more focused on the business sense. The technical part is definitely not solved, and there's huge challenges there when we think about, okay, how do you kind of seamlessly transfer graphics from, like a 3D model of these avatars that we're in Somnium space now. How could you actually take that into Fortnite and the whole system not break, or the, fidelity and information break? So that's another layer. But I think the business solving that to start with, it should be kind of the core.
Yeah, I think you touched on open source there, and Six, I thought you raised a very interesting point about this interoperability, but equally versus gamer design and aesthetic. I think maybe you'd be a great person to start with this, but I wondered how you viewed the importance of open source and equally how this space might balance this. I think you've got an interesting background and story that it might be able to share with the audience if they're not aware from the World of Warcraft and Identity days, and how you view, as I say, the open source development versus the interoperability and balance between these not necessarily competing forces, but not always complementary.
Yeah, so I like to say I was raised by video games. This, it's true. But yeah, so I was playing World of Warcraft and I named my character Six. I was a male undead rogue. Not that it really matters. But I became called Six so often, it became so much part of my identity that I had identity theft. And when that happened, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to be Six. There's obviously a much longer story to that. But I think that, just kind of going back to the balance between closed and open, in the VR world, you have VR chat on one extreme, and then you have Facebook Horizons on the other extreme. And you can make a case that the answer is somewhere in the middle. Because on the VR chat side, you have people that, kind of go to some level of ridiculousness that wouldn't be okay for a lot of people. And then on the, Facebook Horizon side, you have the most mute, boring avatars you can possibly have. And there was another comment that someone made just a second ago, that's a game. I'm going to push back on that a little bit because I think that the idea of a game and a social network are merging. I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're all 3D avatars. Likely, I don't know what this was built in, but I assume it was a game engine to some degree, that there is becoming this convergence of game engines, gaming, even media. Even Hollywood is using Unreal Engine now. So I think the idea of a game is also changing. So with all those considerations, I think that there is probably the final solution will be a mix of two. Basically, the idea of virtual assets that exist as you as an identity across everything, but then some type of creative control when you go into games that need things like, your sword. For example, let's say I'm holding a virtual sword here and the sword has some attack power. It doesn't do anything in this experience, but it'll do something in another experience. And in another experience, it won't do anything either. So those are the type of design considerations when we see this convergence happening of social networks becoming very similar to games. And I would say in many respects, Fortnite and World of Warcraft and things like this are actually social networks as much as they are video games.
Yeah,
Sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
I think I totally agree with that, and I think it's a mix, and I can see it every day in Somnium, right, and in other VR worlds. The more the tech evolves and the more people get immersed, the more real it gets for them. Like I see it on a daily basis where people get on the virtual stage in VR or like this one, and they get stage anxiety. Like they're afraid to talk, even though everything is virtual right now, but it's real for them and it's real for the audience. So this is becoming very real, and people become very serious about everything around what's happening there. So definitely agree. It's social networks merging with games, with experiences, and it's getting more and more interesting. Yeah, I can hear some noise.
That might be me. So I was
yeah,
just
all
going
right.
to step in on that point. No, just to say, I think they're great points you raise, and like you say, you look at what we're doing right now. The kind of line between a game and a social network is clearly blurring, and Silly Tuna, I know you've obviously got a background in gaming as well, and the NFT and blockchain space. So I don't know if it's something you've been thinking about a lot on the kind of siloed versus interoperability and open source side, and how you see those two worlds either competing or diverging or working out with each other. If you're not still chowing down, sorry.
You can see my screen. I'm not chowing
Yeah.
down.
I can't from where I am. Sorry.
Oh, you can rotate the mouse with the right mouse click.
I was
You
afraid
can
I'd
rotate
teleport
the
myself
camera around
again.
you.
Yeah.
So you can
I'll
see
give it a go.
everybody.
Here we go.
Yeah, I rotated around so I could see what was going on. With my game development hat on, the open source side, I think, is a completely different topic. And I think people confuse open source with like cross compatibility and things. So let's put that just to the side. I actually want to pick up on the topic of avatars specifically because I think they're a really good example of what should and shouldn't happen. Six, I think you're completely right about you don't want people just bringing random avatars and random 3D formats, even if there was a standard 3D format, into different worlds. Like as a game developer, no, I don't want that. That's of no use to me. It's just going to cause me a lot of hassle as well. However, I'm talking about that as an in-game experience. It doesn't really work in a lot of cases. And what does work though, and I can say this as the owner of several CryptoPunks, because it's one of the reasons I bought some punks, is certain types of avatar can actually work quite well in pretty much any environment. And in fact, even looking around the room here, you can see that, yes, there's the physical avatar, physical 3D avatar we're walking around in. There's the TV box on our heads, some of us. But there's also a circle above us with an avatar in. I haven't figured out how to fix mine yet, so mine doesn't have one, but I can see it from other people. And that's the same type of avatar you see on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram. And CryptoPunks and many other things can work for those avatars. You could take that avatar and put it into World of Warcraft just in the chat channel. No, I don't want to see it, or maybe just build something. I don't want to see it as a 3D model replacing the character because it doesn't work. But I do think there are ways of doing it. So I'm suspicious of a lot of the 3D avatar systems that are going on. I think they do have use cases, but they feel limited to me, versus these much simpler photos, 2D avatars that can move across systems. And as well as that avatar, if we go back to the magic sword example that's often given, I don't want to create a magic sword that's a magic sword across multiple games because it doesn't really make sense from an awful lot of points of view. But there are some things that do make sense. Shoes, like if you're Nike, you can definitely have shoes reflect something across multiple systems, even where there's things that don't have shoes. If you've got the Nike shoes in say, World of Warcraft, well, they don't want to be doing anything with Nike shoes in World of Warcraft, but what they can do is that if you've got the Nike shoes, you get a certain bonus. You get access to a certain adventure. And that's the point about NFTs. They can represent whatever you want them to represent. So having the Nike shoes can open something up to you, give you an item, give you a bonus, open up part of the world, give you exclusives. Even though it's nothing to do with shoes, it's just a deal for those NFTs. And that works for brands really, really well. So instead of the game developers making swords that are used in different environments, it'll be clothes makers, brands, those sorts of people. They will make stuff and have deals in these different environments that mean that me as a user, I carry this stuff with me in this world, in Somnium space. It's Nike shoes, it's a visible sword or whatever it happens to be. But in those games and in those other environments, it represents something else that is actually up to that game developer working in conjunction with their community or with the brand. So avatars, I think, are slightly different if you're not considering 3D avatars. But there's other aspects that are really, really important. It's actually a representation of an NFT, not the NFT not the NFT itself in its traditional 3D view or whatever.
Yeah,
so I think that's important to consider.
Yeah, on that note, actually, with Nike, I'd be interested to hear Emma6. I think you just said it in the chat. I just saw, your thoughts on it, though, Emma. I noticed there's a comment about Nike failing in Second Life, but I think obviously part of what we're looking at here is that blockchain maybe represents a new opportunity with these kind of interoperabilities and equally ownership of these digital scarce items. So, Emma, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I think it just comes down to, again, the incentive side of things, which is really important with where we're at now. And I think that then that feeds back into functionality. A lot of people associate fashion with just the cosmetic side. And although that does have a big use case, like we see free to play with Fortnite, and they really earn most of their revenue from skins and players coming and buying skins. And sometimes those skins, they have no functional value within the game. It's purely just based on the cosmetic side, which that is a huge market in itself, because that feeds down into self-expression and identity and all components around that. But I do think that kind of, touching more on what Silly Tuna was saying, the interoperability side, it can be more fluid. It doesn't just have to mean that if I buy this T-shirt here, then there has to be the exact representation in this other environment. But it can really be more of like the metagame where, in one environment, it's really focused on the cosmetic side, but in other ones, then the functionality takes over. And I think that's why when we think about, why it didn't succeed so much in these more like Web 2 games and Web 2 environments, because again, they're focused more on how do you actually lock and retain value? How do you create these walled gardens and then secure the walled gardens? So yeah, nothing can kind of come out of that, and the integration side becomes really hard. But with Web 3, and this is where blockchain and crypto again has that really high intrinsic nature in a sense to the metaverse, and what we're kind of talking about with all of these topics is how can you have that fluidity of transfer of content and of value, but do it in a way that it's not just about impeding on a business model of one game developer where they have to kind of stick to one structure. But if we can have interoperability kind of existing across multiple channels and multiple realms, and define that in different ways, then it opens up a lot more access for different developers, content environments, games, metaverses in a sense to come in and value from one item, which really then it becomes more of the representation of that item and what it means in those different environments.
So it's fascinating. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I want to address. Hey, Larry, what's up? You seem a little mad at me in the chat here, so I'm gonna address this. Okay, you just said wrong. I don't know 100% understand what you're trying to say, but let me try to say that my opinions are balanced somewhere in the middle, and the reason for that is I believe there is some level of convergence happening. Okay, so you're specific to games or not societies. Okay. So one of the things that Live, my first company, did is it created persistent identity, and one of those things was an avatar is the idea of persistent identity. And what we recognized is that people, when it's you and you're looking down at a virtual hand and you're seeing a virtual body and you look at a mirror and you see a virtual self, when you go into games, say the game is fantasy and it has nothing to do with you as a person, you're in a fantasy world and you're fighting demons or whatever, and then you go into some other shooter game. We saw that people want to maintain persistence of their virtual identity because now it's you. Now it's you're looking down at your hand. Now it's you looking down at your body. Now it becomes very much a sense of you. And so I don't think they're the same. The point I'm trying to make is that persistent identity, when we start to essentially mesh ourselves with a virtual persona, that people like this idea of persistent identity through games that have nothing to do with a community and through the communities themselves. And my own story was a representation of that, to where my avatar in World of Warcraft kind of became what people saw me as. And so the point I'm trying to make is not that game societies are the same as games, but that once we actually start to inherit these identities and they actually map over our bodies, we become much more connected to them, and we want to carry them into games and into social environments. That's all I'm saying.
I totally agree, and I'll add to that actually. From what we see in Somnium space, and we are mainly a virtual reality world with VR avatars, with full body tracking, and soon, lip tracking and eye tracking. And I can tell it even for myself with my experience, but I see it on everybody who are in VR world. Once you start wearing your avatar and you feel comfortable inside that virtual body, and because, as you said, with full body tracking, you look down, you see your legs, you see your arms. They mimic 100% the same movements as you do in real life. You become that avatar for that period of time when you're in VR. people know you based on that avatar. People interact with you in spatial audio, in the spatial environment, and they, the border between the real and virtual becomes really, really thin. It is, to me, I spend in VR on average probably 3 hours a day right now. And I dream about VR many times and about situations I had in VR as an avatar with other people. I know other people based on their movements, on their avatars. And that's how I associate them with them, right? With their voice and stuff. So as I said, it's a very powerful thing. And people do want to maintain their visual and kind of known identity across different realities, and they will want it more and more. I see it already happening, and I'm certain about that.
I think these are great points that you guys raise, and on the gaming front, there's an interesting debate going on in the comment section. I think just to shed my point of view, I echo Silly Tuna's point that games aren't just about winning, and there are more ways to play than just that, and that you are able to build a community around a game or in a game. And I think how gaming fits into this equally is interesting when you look at, say, Somnium Space or some of the other VR worlds being built. And I was curious just to see how you guys view gaming inside the platforms, because you've got Zrun, obviously is something that a lot of people know about. On the other front, you've got games like Illuvium being built, which have the NFT and the interoperability aspect of the token being able to be taken just out of the game. So I don't know if this is something you guys have thought about, and how you view the gaming world continuing.
Who was it? Question to everybody or to someone?
Yeah, whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, I'll just give an example, and I think, again, this is a very good example about interoperability. So we did, some time ago, we did a partnership with Crypto Motors, and we sold 5, and actually you can see the car behind us. It's an NFT of the car standing there, not the 3D model, but in the actual Somnium space, it is a 3D model. On this parcel, there is a 3D model of the car, which I can jump in and drive in 2 different modes, in VR, in a 2D mode, and actually can use that NFT. So we partnered with Crypto Motors. They created the car. We created an ability to drive, that world's first drivable NFT, and we actually held the world's first, race of NFT cars in Somnium recently. It was mega fun. And everybody loved it, and I loved it. I got addicted to the car, and believe it or not, those cars are already, they're scarce because there's only 5 of those at the moment to drive. There's the first cars, and it just shows that use case is king. When you have an NFT which you can use, and that Crypto Motors car can be used in Somnium Space, in VR, or maybe later somewhere else, that's absolute fantastic, news for the NFT, because the person who owns that car can suddenly utilize it in many different ways, and it becomes a real utility, a real object which he gets attached to, because the car is beautiful. When you see this car in VR and the moonlight hits the car and you see the paint reflecting the moonlight, Jesus Christ, that's awesome, and you think about this car as a real car, not as a gaming object anymore. So yeah, just wanted to bring that example because I'm still fascinated by the race we had.
Yeah, I think the real world equivalent to avatars will end up in, finally solving itself kind of in the same way that we wear clothes. Like when I go to work out, I wear a certain set of clothes. When I go to, if I'm an avatar in a professional space, I'll have my professional avatar. I'll have my, I think that it'll probably answer, the final answer will be kind of same way we physically think of clothes, be what, avatar am I going to wear today?
That actually brings me nicely onto my next question. I wanted to kind of obviously touch on pillars of the metaverse, and one of those things being identity, and how you guys view identity in the space. It's obviously a topic close to your heart, Emma, and everyone else here as well. Kind of a question for the whole panel again, but how do you guys view identity emerging? And I don't mean the boring KYC sense, but your self-expression as an avatar, is it going to be anonymous, pseudo-anonymous? Do you think there'll be mixtures? Six, you just said about kind of a professional avatar as such, and then maybe something that's more relaxed. So that's a question for the whole panel.
Sure, I can start. So I think that identity, it's not going to be a singular, it will be plural. Even if we think about it in Web 2, it kind of is already. We have the professional identities more on LinkedIn, and then we have more like social identities on like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even then they have their own kind of intricacies. So there definitely will be more of a plural sense to it. I don't think though that it's going to be how we think of it today. I think it's a very hard thing to conceptualize because even when
All right, it looks like we lost some audio. Let me restart. We'll be right back, everybody who is watching the live stream. Don't go anywhere. Let's log in. And we are live here.
really long way to go. So I don't think that it's going to be based really maybe so much on human likeness. Like when we see even these avatars in this room today, they do have like these human characteristics that we're used to, the facial features and then the bodies and these kind of things. But I think that there will be more of a fluidity of self-expression itself, and the way that we can self-express, there'll be more kind of a better interface to be able to do that. And with that said, we won't maybe place so much emphasis on an identity being attached to like a face or that, but it might be something more like kind of these little smaller profile pictures that they're seeing where, you have like some people have kind of crypto art, or some people do have kind of like cartoon versions of themselves or of characters and more kind of caricature in nature. So I think it will be very much a mix, and it will just be, there'll be a lot more ways that we can self-express. And then with that, people will choose kind of different avenues, but it won't be refined to like a 3D avatar that we're visualizing today.
Six, I think you have some interesting ideas and opinions on avatars. I saw someone tweet you earlier before the talk about it, and I think it's something you clearly thought about a lot. Would love to hear your thoughts on identity and avatars, obviously, as a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, so let's look at right now what we see as two extremes of form of identity, right? 4chan, where everybody's anonymous, would be one extreme. On the other extreme would be your passport or your driver's license, right? That is a name that was just made up and stamped on a sheet of paper, just like the anonymous, right? But yeah, I think that's on one extreme you have Facebook, who's taking this and trying to basically create a real ID for the whole internet. What they use to basically say that this is the right approach is they say that we can moderate people. We can make sure that, the communication is not toxic. And on the other end, we have, very clear trolling that happens, and women, notoriously have this experience when they go into games, they experience a lot of toxicity. So I think the answer to all these different things is somewhere in the middle. I think what you're referring to is
I think we lost you there, Six. Yeah,
I think we lost him. Yeah, so hopefully he'll. Okay, yeah, probably his internet connection.
We'll give him a second. Arthur or Silly, Tuna, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on the kind of avatar and identity space in the metaverse and how that's developing.
Definitely. Silly, you can go first.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say that it's going to be a bit of a mix of things. It'll be an attestation-based system where you may well have to prove your identity to, so your bank knows your identity. If you trade in crypto, like crypto exchanges know your identity. So we'll probably have these trusted attestation providers that can say you are over 21, that law enforcement, for better and worse, will be able to go to if you do something you shouldn't be doing. Because I think we're seeing, and I'm quite outspoken on this anyway, I think we're seeing the problems of anonymity on social networks. Not that they're doing enough about things anyway, but the problems are huge. A very, very small number of people and states are causing a huge amount of problems, social problems, particularly for democratic countries. It is not sustainable. And we've seen an awful lot of these issues, obviously politically, left and right. It goes both sides, and so full-on anonymity is actually a problem, and it is going to be required at a general level, which decentralized systems can provide, because you want, especially in some states, you want people to be able to say what they want. But at the social level, where most people interact, you definitely need a way that people can interact with one identity, but with something at risk. At the moment, you can go and say whatever you want, bully whoever you want. There is almost nothing at risk other than maybe a little reputation, and that's a problem. So I think that identity is going to get more complex online. We are going to have some form of reputation systems. We're going to have attestation systems, but the simplest form of identity that most of us are comfortable with is walking around with the same name. I mean, one of us here changed their name to match the username. So I quite fancy doing that. But I'll stick with Alex. But yeah, I want to be the only silly tuner around in the metaverse, or at least to be the recognizable silly tuner. Someone else has got my name in one or two places, and it's really annoying. But yeah, if you can identify me by my name and perhaps an image, that would be fantastic, to be honest. So it'll be a whole mix of things in the end. I think we might have lost a couple more people.
Yeah,
teleporting around.
They're teleporting or losing. But I just want to add to this. I think identity, and I agree with everybody who's spoken before me. But I think identity would be a combination of different things. Not only the name and not only the passport or the number. Also, there's a big debate about being fully anonymous and maybe on the other side of it not being anonymous, and of course there are downsides and upsides of this. I think in terms of Somnium, for example, we look at it in a bit different way. It is a part of the solution is kind of like, I always say, there is the technological solution, but there is also a smart game design or smart world design solution. And by that I mean you can encourage certain techniques to identify, to let people identify themselves without pushing them to do so. I'm not sure if what I'm saying makes sense to you, but I'll try to explain. So you can say, look, if you identify yourself, you might have in some games it could be some bonuses, right? Some bonus points and things like that. If you don't do that, you can still be fully functional in that world, but you lose some abilities. Because you didn't identify yourself, and with that, comes some cut functionality. So I think that's important, and people have to have a choice. You have, as we said, on one hand, you have an extreme of Facebook where they force you to log in with your Facebook. They want you, they want your data, they want to collect it. And on the other hand, you have some of the worlds, and in part including Somnium, where you can register with any name, and you can function in a way and be fully virtual anonymous. And of course, some things will change, but as I say, there's always downside and upside for certain things. But we can encourage people without pushing them. We can encourage people to do the right thing by implementing the right, game mechanics or world mechanics.
So essentially, certain incentives, whether that's social or within the gaming frame, can have a new structure for identity.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's
fascinating.
It is like this, right? If it's like in Somnium, for example, we're working on this aspect of your own karma level, where a lot of things come into your one identity and one karma level, where how active you are in the world, how people rate you as the person. Are you active economically in the world? Do you build a lot? Do you help other people to socialize in the world? and many other aspects, and all of that comes into one place. And and whether you are anonymous or you are not anonymous will also play a role into that. And you decide. It is up to the user to decide. But of course, like I see the comments, terms and conditions and laws. Obviously, companies like Somnium and others have to obey the laws. And but we law is one thing, but overshooting it and collecting all the data which are necessary by the law and collecting and over-collecting the data is even worse. So there has to be a balance. Company has to be by the rules and play by the rules, but on the other hand, company has to also give some freedom to the user to decide what they do with their identity, and they have to have control over their own data. There's no other way around it. So.
One thing I really want people to think about when they think about identity is the issue of having several different people with the same name. One of the guys I know in the VR space is named Robert Long, and one of the most recent people that shot up a bunch of people here in the United States was also named Robert Long. So he woke up in the morning and basically, now a serial killer has destroyed the SEO of his name. And this is a foundational problem. Yeah. And it's actually one of the reasons I legally changed my name is that, my original birth name was kind of a generic white boy name. And I was always concerned, if someone were to do something and I'd wake up someday and, someone, I don't know, does something. If you share the same name as someone else, then they can basically destroy your reputation or by association, sometimes even sharing a last name with someone else. I fundamentally believe that as we move more and more towards a digital society, we need to find a way to, bring accountability to people's names, but also consider that, if someone shares the same exact name of you and you have kind of a generic name, you could wake up one day and all of a sudden your reputation or your search engine optimization, anybody searches your name, they see you're a serial killer or a pedophile or something, right? And that's a real problem with more and more people getting named the same generic, John, Paul, Mark, whatever, names when they're born, right?
Fascinating point there. I don't know, Silly Tuna, we lost you before if you had a chance to finish your point on identity as well, and then I was equally interested to hear, Emma, your view just on fashion and collectibles and how that's a way to express yourself across games. But ST, maybe we can give you a chance and see if you don't freeze.
Yeah, sorry, I just lost the voice, so I just reloaded. So I missed the end of what was being said, but what I was going to say was on the subject of whether you should always be able to come onto an anonymous system. I think there should always be the option in general, but that doesn't have to be the option on every single platform or every virtual world.
Oh, sure.
But they could easily be, for example, well, in fact, I'm going to give an example of the problems. Reddit is a really good example of the problems. There's a load of really good subreddits, but Reddit for many, many years allowed full anonymity on you to talk about almost anything. And we saw what problems that caused, because there was basically no comeback for whatever you did. And there were definitely, and I'm party to some information here that probably not everyone is, there were definitely state actors pushing that. And that's a real problem. And that isn't even solved just with identity. These are really difficult problems to solve. And the idea that you can try and persuade people to behave properly through social systems, through enabling extra features if you prove who you are, that's true. But anyone who wants to will game it, and you can't stop it. So you have to have something that's above that. And so fundamentally, I believe a combination of all of these things will happen. But at the moment, the lack of responsibility when people are online, there's no comeback when people do very, very bad things, has led to such big problems that I come again that things will have to happen to deal with that. And on blockchain-based systems, it's no different. Identity systems that we deal with are going to have bits of this built in where we will have to attest who we are, for better and worse, to use a lot of platforms. It won't be open. And I wish it wasn't the case, but the responsibility for these problems actually does fall heavily on Facebook and Twitter, because they haven't dealt with it. I found that I could find all sorts of problems pretty trivially that they could have found without hiring someone like me. and they've not dealt with it because it went against their business model. So they have landed us in this mess, but we are all going to have to clean up with the privacy system, with the identity systems, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll also add one thing. We're actually working on, we'll be revealing some parts of the identity system for kind of like online system for Somnium, because we know that this is one of the most important parts for people how to identify themselves, and we're doing it on the blockchain. And one thing we realized very quickly is that one of the best motivators for let's call it a reasonable human behavior, if not social impact, if you do something wrong, it's a monetary part. Like if you are being punished by monetary aspect for doing something stupid, it you feel it. Like some people, for many people, it works that way. And I'm not saying that's the only case and that's the only solution. I'm saying monetary motivation, let's call it like this, could be a real part and pillar for the identity itself, for the identity solution in the future itself. So you do something right, you get rewarded. If you do something wrong, you get monetary punished. So that is one of the aspects, and we see that could work really well for certain use cases.
So something akin to staking in the crypto space, where you're punished if things aren't done correctly, right, exactly. But there's a reward. Yes,
exactly. Kind of like you are out there and you're responsible for your own actions, and once you screw up, you get punished, and this punishment could be a short-term monetary punishment, and you can feel it right away, or it could be something where you would even feel it long term, and you loosen that. So this is again, it's not a full solution, but it's a part of the solution, which will definitely help to solve and to get there in terms of how would you motivate people if there is no other motivation. This is one of the answers.
I'm conscious, I know we started a bit late, but just to be respectful of everyone's time, Emma, I would love to hear your thoughts on the identity and the fashion perspective as well. I think it's a great way to be able to differentiate yourself, whether that's through certain collectibles like the crypto art, nifty dudes, crypto punks, or through the actual designer clothing and how you approach that. And then maybe we can finish with some closing thoughts from everyone. And a
sure.
Q&A.
Yeah. I mean, just to add quickly to Ada's point about, staking in a sense on your identity. There's actually a company, it's called Kleros, I'm pretty sure, and it's called Proof of Humanity. So they have this whole system where it's about how do you actually prove unique humans on the internet. And they incentivize that through you actually stake, in a sense, your own humanness, in a sense, on other people coming to the network that you actually validate. Yep. And if that ends up being wrong and that person, is kind of gaming the system, or they are a bad actor in the system, then you also kind of lose your stake, your identity in that system and get kicked out as well. And they're distributing UBI token through this. So it's a really interesting, I'd actually encourage people to look it up, Proof of Humanity. But it's all about that. How do you actually secure digital identity online, and how do you create an incentivized ecosystem behind that as well? So that's one interesting point there. When it comes to the fashion side, I mean, I guess to still keep it short, like you said, to kind of wrap things up. But yeah, fashion, it's fundamental to identity. It's fundamental to self-expression. I think that fashion will have a really kind of key role, just like it has, for thousands of years. If we think about going back to Egyptian times and everything, where it was just as vital as it is today. Fashion always had a core kind of connection to status, or how people really want to represent themselves. So I think that will also translate when we talk about, why people wear certain things, or why they'll kind of value one clothing item or garment or whatever that ends up being over another. It will have some connection to status. And this is the same thing with NFTs. When we think about rarity and on-chain rarity, why do, exclusive one-of-ones go for higher prices than open editions? Or, collections where there's 1,000 or 500 out of that collection. It does come down to status as well, and that uniqueness. So I think that that's going to have a really important part, which, again, it's the same kind of heuristics that we see already within the industry, but just being able to translate and execute in different ways.
Yep.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. I just thought maybe a nice way to wrap up would be to put it to each of you. I don't know if there's a topic or something that is particularly playing on your mind about the metaverse that you'd like to close on, either a thought, a theory, something for people to think about, just to give you guys a chance if we've not covered something that you think is important.
Yeah, I think I always, I think some people have been annoyed by that already when they listen to me. But I don't apologize for that because I think it's important. I always highlight two things. One thing is, I think in terms of, if we talk about NFTs, I think it's very important to, have a use case for NFTs. Six, could you, could you mute? Thanks. Could you mute your microphone, please? Because you're echoing to me. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. Thank you. So I think NFTs, use case is king, and NFTs without use case are partly doomed to be relying on trendiness of the NFT itself. Like if you buy an NFT and it has no use case directly, or it doesn't bring you this use case value, you have to ask yourself why you buy it and what are you going to do with that, right? But if it has a use case, if we talk about an avatar, it has a direct impact on you as the person. It has the impact on other people, and you can wear that avatar, and you can play games with it. You can be yourself. You can make anything with this avatar, like record a show or dance, whatever you are good at, you can do that. Or if we talk about the car, you can drive that car, right? So NFTs use cases are super important, and I think more and more companies have to realize that and actually implement those use cases and try to bring them to life so that people can actually have value out of that, not only aesthetic value, but also a real value. And another thing I would say to me and to Somnium, and we are kind of like trying to push it and to pioneer it, is the VR aspect. VR is not yet just another technology which is kind of like an add-on technology and which people might use or might not use. I fully believe that VR will change the way how humanity works, how humanity exists, and how humanity kind of coexists, let's call it like this. Coexist is the good word. And those highly immersive environments can literally change your life, can trick your brain in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, and it has a profound impact on how human beings operate and what kind of things we'll be able to do, and how more efficiently as the society will be able to to work while having those headsets. I think AR will also play a role, but VR is just such an immersive technology which has such an important and interesting impact on the brain that I really believe that it will be a game changer for many aspects of the society.
Fantastic. Silly Tuna, I don't know if you had any other closing thoughts you'd like to share.
Yeah, actually, it's relevant to Somnium space, to be honest. I mean, it's really interesting that we have, platforms being built that you can use some aspects of Ethereum for or the blockchain. So Somnium space, Decentraland, Crypto Voxels, and Sandbox 3D. But I'm kind of, having used Second Life back in the day, it was fun, but it was sort of limited, but it was fun. But the world changed after Second Life in terms of social media has completely taken over that side of things, really. And I think it's very, very hard now for virtuals to really get a really strong audience. I'm actually kind of intrigued as to how all these blockchain-based virtuals will do. And I'm most intrigued by Sandbox, because Sandbox has got a big gaming mechanic around it, although it might attract only certain ages. And I always wonder what's going to happen if and when, I could even say, Fortnite supports NFTs and more customization, and what happens to the other worlds. I think there's room for all of them, which is why interoperability is super important. But I'm also intrigued as to what would happen if Fortnite just said tomorrow, we're supporting NFTs, you can bring NFTs here, you can bring avatars here, you can build your own stuff and just have your own little world. Do we think there's space for the Somnium space of this world? I think that we do, because I think they're very specific. But I'm just interested in the world when that happens. I don't think it will in the near future. But what if it did?
I can answer. I think so. I'm working on this on Somnium since 2017. I think every year someone predicts the death of new coming companies by some big companies coming in and eating everything in the market. And we've seen, like, I remember vividly when Facebook announced Facebook Horizon, my inbox got absolutely spammed by people asking, what do you think about this? What is it the death of Somnium Space? How Facebook will take over? Honestly, first of all, I think every company has a different take on how the metaverse and how the social aspect of that works. So there is, again, the metaverse is not one company. The metaverse is a set of different companies providing different use cases and different aesthetics, different feel and economical advantages for different set of people. And if you tell me that Fortnite tomorrow comes with NFTs, you know what will happen? They will lose 70% of their audience, just because people don't understand what's happening. Their audience today will not be able to quickly adapt to what NFTs is. So let them do it. We'll see what happens. But I think it's just it's never from day one to day two. It's the process, and during those processes, companies like Somnium, do their thing. They grow, and hopefully we continue to grow. And other companies, they either adapt or they don't adapt. They bring something new. There's new innovation. Facebook Horizon aesthetically looks to me more like an alt space and rec room. VR chat is closer to our, genetics, let's say, more realistic approach. So yeah, it's a metaverse of different experiences. And there is enough people on this planet to enjoy those metaverses. And though everybody will choose something for themselves, and hopefully, and we are committed to that, they will be able to go from one to another without losing their identity, their belongings, and their economical possessions, and they'll be able to interact within those worlds. And that's the key for success for every metaverse out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think basically what I was really saying is interoperability is why it wouldn't kill everything else, let alone that they wouldn't do it and then other issues like that would affect them. But interoperability, like this, with this metaverse, like connecting all these different things through ID, avatars, whatever it happens to be, is what's important, because it allows you to run those niches and expand those niches beyond niches as well, because you can be something else, but you've already got an audience who can come in with something. Whereas if you're trying to create an audience, attract an audience who don't have, like, they're coming into something from scratch, it's harder. So that's why I kind of like that we can do all these things. That's why I'm intrigued to see what happens. I'm not predicting the failure of them at all. I think actually where we have an internet of value, you can have niches like crypto voxels, and they can be very successful, even if they have a very low number of users that normally wouldn't be sustainable. That's, I'm an intrigued. I'm just gonna be watching. I don't have a vested interest in any of these things. So.
An intrigued observer. Yeah. Six, I don't know if you've, again, I just kind of closing thoughts, anything you wanted to share that hasn't been covered, or?
Yeah, I think oftentimes in technology, we get way too optimistic without pausing sometimes. And I think the biggest thing I want us to really think about is the power of technology right now, in that you can influence 1 billion people very slightly with a tweet or some type of, something in technology. And as Arthur spoke about virtual reality, we're becoming our technology. It's becoming who we are. As we walk around and we stare at our phones, it's already augmented reality. It's not optimal augmented reality on your face, but when you're walking around staring at your phone and you're checking your Twitter instead of talking to your friend, you're already valuing virtual life above real life. And one of the concerns I have here is that we are valuing our virtual identities more than our physical identities, but we haven't quite figured that out yet. And we're giving a lot of power to some of the largest companies in the world to control that identity. So that's why, I'm not as involved into the decentralized space as I should, but I really respect what this represents, because we can't give our identity to a company like Facebook. We can't give all the keys to the castle to companies that are designed for subtle influence on a global scale. And so, this is a big thing we need to solve, but also, the real world's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, great points. I have a Quest 2 I bought in this lockdown reluctantly because I had to use a Facebook account to access it, and you're at risk of being bricked if something happens that they don't like, or it violates some weird term of service that you're not aware of. So, a great point. I don't know, Emma, if she's still here.
She's having a hard time getting in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had another point. I had that issue earlier. I mean, look, I just thought, I think that might be a nice closing point, thinking about how we think about identity, and that we're not necessarily there yet with digital identity, and yet there's a huge value accrued to it. And it's a space we're still figuring out. So I don't know if anyone had any other questions or if we had time for that, but I know we've overrun slightly. So if not, I'm happy to draw it to a close here and just say thank you, Arta, for putting this together, Emma too, and Six and Silly Tuna for all coming up as guests. It's been an absolute privilege to moderate you all.
I can only say thank you for coming. It was a lovely discussion, and I wish we could have more of those, because it's not only a good discussion, it's a great exercise. We think about things, and sometimes we have new ideas during those discussions, and we hear different opinions, and that's awesome. So
give one opinion. We need to stop everyone looking at their pseudo avatar watches every minute on stage.
It's a reminder about real life, right? Yeah, it's a great animation. I love this animation.
And I was conscious I was running out of time, and I definitely felt like that picked up as we got over the time zone. So maybe it was a good prompt. But.
Yeah, Somnium Web is in beta, so there are some quirks and features which are still coming in, and we're rolling out them as fast as we possibly and humanly can. So stay with us, stick to it. It's coming, but I encourage you to check Somnium in VR, because that's where the real persistent magic is. Sorry for shameless plug.
No, I was just about to say I would encourage everyone to go check out Somnium, follow Silly Tuna and Six on Twitter if you're not. I know Silly Tuna hosts a great clubhouse on NFTs, NFT rants, which I've listened in a few times and learnt a lot from already. And obviously Emma as well with Digitalex. So thank you everyone for listening to us and participating as well. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to doing another one with you all soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thanks, Arthur. That was fantastic.
Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and thank you everybody who came in and listened, and who contributed to the chat. It was a great discussion there, and it's awesome to see all of you here. I love it. This is my parcel. This parcel already had different shows by Vocious, Trevor Jones. We had a fashion show here. We've recorded several podcasts here. It's a very functional and useful parcel of mine. So
I'd love to. We'll have to chat more then, because I'd love to help out with some of that. That's brilliant.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So,
brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I'll be disconnecting from this reality, and see you. As I always finish my streams, I always say, see you on the other side of the monitor. That's my that's my stuff. So see you on the other side of your monitors, everybody. And until the next time, goodbye.
See you then. Bye.